Emily Hartman never imagined that the soft glow of chandeliers in the ballroom of the Plaza Hotel would become the place where her world cracked open. She stepped inside, holding baby Noah close to her chest, her other hand resting instinctively on her growing belly. At 6 months pregnant, every breath felt heavier. But she pushed herself forward because Jacob had insisted she come. He said it was important for appearances. He said she needed to look supportive. She believed him, because a part of her still wanted to believe that marriage meant something, even when it hurt. The room was packed with Manhattan's finest, polished marble floors, champagne flutes glimmering, and a string quartet playing near a tower of white roses. Emily felt small among them, dressed in a modest navy dress she had bought 2 years ago on sale. Jacob, meanwhile, looked like he belonged. Tailored black suit, silver tie, the posture of a man who wanted the world to see him rise. But he didn't even offer to carry her coat, her purse, or help with baby Noah. He just kept walking ahead, ignoring the way she struggled to keep up with the stroller. She knew he was drifting away. She just didn't know how far. Emily spotted him across the room, laughing too easily, leaning too close to a woman in a shimmering silver gown. Vanessa Brooks, the woman who always wore bold red lipstick and spoke as if every sentence was a promise she didn't intend to keep. Emily felt her stomach tighten, not from the baby, but from something sharper. Still, she kept silent. Tonight wasn't the night for conflict. She just wanted Jacob to look at her. Really look at her. But Jacob didn't look at her. He looked through her. When Emily reached them, Vanessa's smile curled in a way that wasn't friendly at all. Her eyes flicked to Emily's swollen belly, and then to baby Noah, and she let out a soft laugh. "Well," Vanessa said, "isn't this a sight?" Jacob didn't defend his wife. He didn't even correct Vanessa's tone. Instead, he placed a hand on Emily's arm as if guiding her into position, like a prop he needed to arrange. Then the moment shifted. Something about Vanessa's expression darkened, and she leaned in, whispering something Emily didn't catch. But Jacob's jaw tightened. He looked at Emily with a coldness that made her legs go weak. "Emily," he said sharply, "apologize to Vanessa." Emily blinked. "For what?" "For embarrassing me," Jacob said, voice low but full of warning. Emily didn't understand. She had barely spoken. She shook her head in confusion. "I didn't." "Jacob, what are you talking about?" Before she could finish, Jacob grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. He held her there, fixing her in place, turning her body slightly toward Vanessa. Vanessa lifted her hand. Emily's heart stopped. Surely Jacob would stop this. Surely he wouldn't let. The slap never came. Not yet. But the air around them tightened as guests began to notice. People paused mid-conversation. Glasses stopped clinking. Even the music felt like it hesitated. Emily swallowed, her throat burning. Noah shifted in her arms, sensing her trembling. She tried to pull free. "Jacob, please." His fingers only tightened. And in that frozen second, Emily realized something terrifying. Jacob wasn't going to protect her. Jacob was going to let it happen. And everyone in the room was about to see exactly how far he was willing to go. Vanessa's hand hovered in the air, trembling slightly, not from fear but from excitement. The room quieted until even the soft clink of ice in a glass seemed loud. Emily stood frozen, one arm wrapped around baby Noah, her other arm held tightly by Jacob's grip. She could feel her pulse pounding in her ears, loud enough that she almost couldn't hear the whispering rising around them. Vanessa lowered her hand for a moment, letting the anticipation simmer. She took a slow step closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Her smile was thin, practiced, the smile of someone who wanted to leave a mark, not just on a cheek, but on a life. Emily felt her knees weaken, yet she stayed still, trying to protect Noah from the tension squeezing the air around them. Jacob didn't loosen his hold. If anything, his fingers dug deeper, a silent warning to stay quiet. His eyes darted around the room, not in shame, but in calculation. He saw his bosses, investors, colleagues, and instead of stepping back, he stepped further into cruelty, as if proving something to people who barely knew his name. Vanessa tilted her head, letting her earrings glimmer in the chandelier light. "You heard him," she said softly, coldly. "Apologize." Emily shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't know what lie Vanessa had told Jacob, but she knew the truth didn't matter. Not tonight. Without warning, Vanessa raised her hand again and swung. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a snap branch. Emily's cheek burned instantly, her head turning from the force, but she kept Noah tight in her arms. A collective gasp rippled across the room. But the slap wasn't the worst part. The worst part was Jacob. He didn't flinch. He didn't reach for her. He didn't even look sorry. Instead, he cleared his throat, straightened his tie, and said loudly, "Maybe now you'll learn to behave." Those words sliced deeper than any hand could. Emily felt the room closing in. Her vision blurred at the edges. She tightened her hold on Noah, afraid her shaking would frighten him. A woman near the bar turned away. A man near the orchestra lowered his gaze. No one stepped forward. No one spoke. Vanessa smirked, satisfied, but Emily could see something strange in her eyes, a flicker of nervousness, like she had expected Jacob to take her side more boldly. Something was off. Emily didn't know what, but the tension between Vanessa and Jacob felt sharper than the slap. Jacob released Emily's wrist at last, but only because he realized people were recording. Phones rose discreetly. Eyes watched every breath. Jacob adjusted his cufflinks, pretending to be the victim of a dramatic wife instead of the man who held her still to be struck. Emily swallowed hard, pain radiating across her cheek. She felt humiliation settle over her like a heavy coat. But beneath it, something else sparked, an anger long buried under years of trying to keep the peace. She didn't speak yet. She couldn't. But something inside her had cracked free. And in that charged silence, before anyone could move or breathe, the ballroom doors opened, and someone Emily never expected to see walked in. Gasps rippled again as the figure stepped forward, the polished floor reflecting their confident strides. Emily blinked through the haze of pain, unsure if her mind was playing tricks on her. But the room shifted, whispers rushed like wind, and even Jacob's arrogance faltered for the first time that night. Everyone sensed the moment was about to turn for them all. Emily blinked hard, trying to steady her breathing as the ballroom doors swung wide open. She was still trembling from the slap, her cheek throbbing in slow, hot pulses. Baby Noah whimpered softly, sensing her fear. She rocked him lightly, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart," though nothing felt okay. Her legs felt unsteady, almost ready to buckle beneath her. She held Noah tighter against her chest, as if the small child were the only anchor she had left in that glittering, cruel room. The chandeliers above her seemed too bright, almost blinding. Every polished surface, silver trays, glass walls, champagne towers, reflected back an image of a woman on the brink of collapse. Emily's thoughts tangled. She wanted to run, but didn't know where to go. She wanted to speak, but didn't trust her voice. She wanted someone, anyone, to step forward and say that what she had just endured was wrong. But no one did. Jacob stood beside her, with the posture of a man who believed he had already won. He straightened his jacket, gave a stiff nod to a group of investors, and acted as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. As though he had not held his pregnant wife still for another woman to strike. As though pain was something Emily deserved. Emily tried to move away, but the heel of her shoe slipped slightly on the marble, and she stumbled. A sharp pain shot up her back. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered she might fall, but she caught herself on the edge of a nearby table, steadying Noah with both arms. Her breath shook, her heart pounding painfully against her ribs. Vanessa clicked her tongue. "Oh dear," she said, her voice dripping false sympathy. Maybe she shouldn't be carrying so much, being fragile and all. Emily felt her throat tighten. She wasn't fragile. She was exhausted, humiliated, hurting, but she wasn't fragile. Still, the room's silence made her feel like she was shrinking until she barely existed. A waiter hesitated near her, as if wanting to help, but one warning glance from Jacob made him step back. Emily lowered her eyes, feeling the sting of isolation, more cutting than the slap itself. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Emily's cheek pulsed with every heartbeat. Her thoughts swirled. Should she leave? Could she leave? Would Jacob follow her? Hurt her more? The uncertainty wrapped around her like frost, stealing every breath. She felt herself swaying slightly. Her vision dimmed at the edges, gray and fuzzy. Noah's small fingers clutched her dress, grounding her just enough to stay upright. The music resumed faintly, as if the orchestra had been instructed to pretend nothing had happened. People murmured, looking anywhere but at her. Emily reached for a chair, desperate for a moment to rest. But Jacob caught her arm again, not violently, but with enough force to stop her. "Stand up straight," he hissed. "You're embarrassing me." Embarrassing him. The words echoed cruelly in her mind. Her cheeks burned, not just from the slap, but from shame and anger fighting for space inside her chest. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry here. Not in front of these people. Not for Jacob. Then suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The ballroom swayed, the lights blurred, her knees buckled. She gasped, clutching Noah tightly as she felt herself falling. A collective gasp swept the room, but just before she hit the floor, a voice rose above the chaos. Deep, commanding, unmistakably familiar. "Emily." The voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Heads turned. The music stopped again. Emily tried to lift her head, her vision swimming, and through the haze she saw the silhouette of a man pushing past guests with purposeful strides. Someone strong. Someone angry. Someone who wasn't supposed to be here. Someone who might finally change everything. The voice thundered across the ballroom, freezing every whisper, every breath, every flicker of movement beneath the golden chandeliers. Emily lifted her head slowly, still dazed, still clinging to baby Noah as though the child were the only steady thing left in her spinning world. Her vision sharpened just enough for her to recognize the tall figure cutting through the crowd. Broad shoulders, firm steps, a face carved with authority and fury. Judge Robert Sanders. Her father. Guests parted for him like water breaking around a ship's bow. He wasn't dressed for an event. He wore a dark overcoat over his suit, snowflakes melting on the shoulders, suggesting he had rushed straight from somewhere important. His face was stern, yet his eyes softened the moment they landed on Emily's trembling form. "Emily," he said again, this time quieter, but each syllable carried the weight of a man who had spent his life delivering justice. He reached her side just as her legs threatened to buckle again. He steadied her with one hand on her back, his other arm gently supporting Noah. "Why didn't you call me?" he whispered. Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. "I didn't want to worry you." Behind them, Jacob's expression twisted into something between shock and irritation. He stepped forward, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Judge Sanders," he said, his voice falsely warm, "this isn't what it looks like." Sanders didn't even glance at him. He studied Emily's cheek instead, the redness, the swelling, the raw humiliation still visible. He inhaled sharply. "Who touched you?" His voice was calm, deadly calm, the kind of calm that made courtrooms fall silent. Vanessa stiffened. People shifted uneasily. No one dared speak. Jacob finally forced a laugh. "It was nothing. A misunderstanding. Emily overreacted as usual. You know how pregnancy emotions can be." Sanders turned his head slowly, fixing Jacob with a look that stripped away every lie. "Finish that sentence," he said, "and see what happens." The room fell completely silent. Jacob's throat bobbed. He looked around for support, but the same guests who had happily ignored Emily's suffering now stared at the floor. No one wanted to be caught on the wrong side of a judge. Sanders finally turned to the crowd. "Who struck my daughter?" Vanessa's hand twitched. Someone near the orchestra muttered. The waiter froze in place. Emily swallowed. "Vanessa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Sanders nodded once, slowly absorbing it like evidence presented before him. His eyes landed on Vanessa, who straightened her shoulders, trying to appear unfazed. "She provoked me," she said quickly. "She always does." Sanders raised an eyebrow. "By standing there, holding a child, or by existing in a way that inconveniences you?" Vanessa's lips parted in offense, but no words came. Jacob stepped in again, desperate. "Sir, with all respect, this is a private matter." Sanders stepped closer, towering over him. "You laid hands on my daughter," he said. "Or you held her still so someone else could. Which is worse, Jacob? Help me understand." Emily felt her breath hitch. She had never seen her father like this, controlled, furious, and heartbreakingly protective. For the first time that night, something inside her loosened. She wasn't alone, not anymore. Jacob tried to respond, but Sanders cut him off sharply. "You will not speak to her. Not tonight, not until I say so." Emily felt warmth rise in her chest, a small, fragile spark of safety. Then Sanders turned, looking directly at her. "Emily," he said quietly, "you're coming with me." The crowd watched, breathless, and Jacob realized he was losing control for the first time. Jacob's jaw clenched so tightly a vein throbbed along his temple. Losing control wasn't something he tolerated, not at home, not at work, and certainly not in front of Manhattan's elite. He stepped forward, attempting to reclaim authority, but Judge Sanders shifted subtly, placing himself between Jacob and Emily. It was a silent barrier, but everyone in the room understood its meaning. "Emily isn't going anywhere," Jacob said, trying to sound confident. But his voice wavered. "She came with me, she's my wife." Sanders didn't turn around. "She is my daughter," he replied calmly, "and she's leaving with me." Jacob scoffed. "You're overreacting. It was one slap. She's dramatic. She always twists things." "Jacob," Sanders said, finally facing him, "I've spent 30 years listening to lies in courtrooms. Yours are the easiest I've ever heard." A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread across the ballroom. Jacob's face reddened. He glanced fast at the investors watching nearby, men whose approval meant everything to him. He forced a laugh, though it sounded brittle. "Come on, Judge. This is a party. Emily misunderstood a joke, that's all." "A joke that left a handprint on her face?" Sanders asked quietly. "And a room full of witnesses?" Jacob opened his mouth, but Sanders raised a single hand, just a gesture, yet it silenced him completely. Emily shifted Noah in her arms, her cheek still throbbing. She could feel the weight of every stare in the room, pity mixed with fear. No one wanted to cross Jacob, but no one wanted to challenge a judge either. Her throat tightened, and for a moment she felt guilty, like she was causing a scene, like she was the problem. Jacob saw that flicker of doubt in her face and seized it. "Em," he said, softening his tone, "you know how you get. You're tired, emotional. Everyone here knows how pregnancy can affect." "Stop," Emily whispered. Jacob blinked, surprised. She had rarely ever stopped him. "I'm not emotional," she said, voice trembling but steady enough. "I'm hurt." Sanders placed a hand gently on her back. "You don't owe him explanations." Jacob's frustration flared. "She's my wife. Damn it, she doesn't need you speaking for her." Sanders's eyes hardened. "You forfeited any right to speak for her when you held her down." The crowd sucked in a breath. It was the first time anyone had said it aloud. Held her down. Reality sharpened like a blade. Jacob's eyes darted nervously. His image, his precious, carefully crafted image, was slipping through his fingers. He reached out as though to touch Emily's arm, but Sanders stepped forward. "Don't," the judge warned. Jacob's voice cracked. "Em, don't do this. Don't make me look like the villain." "You did that yourself," she whispered. Her words hit him harder than Vanessa's slap had hit her. He staggered back slightly, caught off guard by the quiet strength in her tone. For a moment, the confident man in a tailored suit vanished, replaced by someone desperate, scared of losing control. "Emily," he pleaded again, "don't humiliate me like this. Come with me. We'll talk privately." Emily shook her head. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone here." She swallowed. "And you didn't even care." Something bitter twisted Jacob's mouth. "You think anyone's going to side with you? With her father?" He jerked his chin toward Sanders. "This is politics. Everyone here knows it." But when he looked around again, not a single person met his eyes. As if the ballroom itself had quietly chosen a side. Vanessa stepped closer, touching Jacob's arm. "Jacob," she whispered, "maybe we should leave." He pulled his arm away violently, startling her. Panic crept into his features, because deep down he knew he was losing everything. Emily watched him, heart pounding. For the first time, she wasn't the one who felt small. And Jacob realized the night wasn't done, turning against him. Emily's legs finally gave way the moment Judge Sanders guided her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. The noise, the lights, the humiliation, it all pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. Baby Noah whimpered against her shoulder, his tiny fingers curling in her dress as if sensing the storm inside her. She leaned into a chair, trembling so violently she worried she might drop him. Sanders immediately took Noah from her arms, holding him with the gentleness of someone who had loved Emily long before Jacob ever appeared. Her father's voice softened. "You're safe now." Safe. The word unraveled something inside her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, silent and unstoppable. She covered her face with her hands, unable to hold back anymore. Every insult Jacob had thrown at her, every night he'd dismissed her fears, every moment she'd forced herself to believe things would change, they all flooded her at once, and she broke. Sanders knelt beside her. "Emily, look at me." She did. Her eyes were red, swollen, desperate. "You do not have to stay with a man who harms you," he said firmly. "You are not trapped." But Emily shook her head. "I am trapped. He controls everything. Our money, our apartment, my medical insurance. And Noah, what if he tries to take him away?" Sanders's jaw tightened. "He won't succeed. Not with what I know." Emily blinked. "What you know?" Before her father could answer, Jacob stormed toward them again, ignoring the murmurs chasing him across the ballroom. Vanessa followed close behind, but there was fear in her steps now, not confidence. Jacob pointed at Emily, voice shaking with rage and panic. "You're not leaving with him. I'm your husband. You owe me respect. You owe me loyalty." Sanders stood. "Respect is earned. Loyalty is mutual. You have neither." Jacob lunged forward. "Stay out of this?" The judge didn't move. "I warned you." Guests watched in stunned silence. Some filmed. Others whispered. Vanessa tugged Jacob's sleeve, trying to pull him back, but he shrugged her off violently. Emily rose shakily to her feet. "Jacob, please, just stop." But her calmness only angered him further. "You think running to your father makes you strong? You think anyone's going to side with you over mine?" His voice cracked at the end. Fear hid beneath his anger, fear of losing control, fear of exposure. Sanders looked at him sharply. "Jacob, I know about the accounts." Jacob froze. "What accounts?" "The ones you opened in Emily's name," Sanders said. "The debts, the transfers, the forged signatures." Emily's breath caught. Her knees nearly buckled again. "What?" Jacob panicked. She agreed to those. "I've seen the documents," Sanders cut in, "and so has the district attorney." A stunned silence rolled through the ballroom. Emily stared at Jacob, horror sinking into her bones. "You put debt in my name?" Jacob's face twisted. "It was temporary. You were supposed to pay it off when your inheritance cleared." "My inheritance?" Emily whispered. "That was for Noah." Jacob ran a shaky hand through his hair. "I had no choice. You don't understand how much pressure I'm under." Sanders stepped closer. "Your pressure is about to get much worse." Jacob's breathing quickened. He looked around wildly, realizing the room had turned against him completely. Investors whispered. Phones recorded. Vanessa backed away slowly as though Jacob's downfall might stain her too. Emily watched him unravel. For years she had feared him. For the first time, she saw him afraid of her. And Jacob had no idea the worst was still coming for him in ways he never imagined before. Emily felt the room tilt again, not from fear this time, but from the weight of a truth far heavier than the slap on her cheek. Jacob hadn't just betrayed her heart. He had stolen from her. He had dragged her name into debts she never agreed to. And he had done it all while looking her in the eye and calling himself her husband. Her breath shook. "Why, Jacob?" she whispered. "Why would you do that to me?" Jacob's lips trembled, anger and panic twisting together. "I did it for us. You think I wanted to?" "I needed capital for my deal. It was just supposed to be temporary until I could bring in the first investors." "Investors?" Sanders repeated sharply. "You mean the same investors who have been quietly pulling out for the last 2 weeks?" Jacob's head jerked up. "How do you know about that?" "Because," Sanders said, straightening, "the DA contacted me this morning. There are whispers of embezzlement inside your department. Missing funds. Falsified invoices. You were already under review." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Emily felt her stomach drop. Jacob turned pale. "That's not true. It's a mistake. Someone's trying to set me up." Vanessa's fingers twitched. She stepped back, lips tightening as though bracing for something she already knew was coming. Sanders narrowed his eyes. "Is that so?" Jacob nodded frantically. "Yes. Someone inside the company is manipulating the numbers." Vanessa squeezed her eyes shut. Emily saw it, the guilt flickering across her face like a crack in glass. Jacob noticed too. He whipped around, staring at Vanessa with dawning horror. "You," he breathed. "It's you. You're the one who tampered with the accounts." Vanessa flinched. "Jacob, I had no choice." "What does that mean?" Emily asked, voice hoarse. Vanessa swallowed hard, her mask slipping. "The CFO came to me months ago. He said Jacob was getting reckless, cutting corners, moving money without authorization. He told me to keep an eye on him, and to leave a trail if anything went wrong." Jacob staggered. "You set me up?" Vanessa's voice cracked. "He threatened my job. He said if I didn't cooperate, I'd be the one blamed. I didn't think it would go this far." "You didn't think?" Jacob hissed. "You were helping me, sleeping with me, while sabotaging me?" Vanessa's face twisted with shame. I never thought he'd actually report it. I thought I could fix it later. Emily stared, numb. She had walked into a nightmare deeper than she imagined. Lies stacked on lies, betrayal threaded into every corner of her marriage. Jacob turned toward Emily desperately. You have to believe me. I didn't know any of this. Emily looked at him, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw him clearly. Every manipulation, every excuse, every moment he made her feel small. She saw a man who didn't love her, just the control he had over her. She saw a man who would destroy her to save himself. No, she whispered, I don't believe you, not anymore. Jacob's face crumpled, rage rising to fill the cracks. Emily. But Sanders stepped in front of her, his voice firm. That's enough. Jacob lunged forward, desperate to regain even a sliver of her attention, her trust, something. But two security guards, summoned silently by staff, intercepted him, placing firm hands on his arms. Jacob thrashed. Don't touch me, I didn't do anything. Vanessa didn't move to help him. The crowd didn't look away this time. For once, Emily didn't shrink. She didn't shake. She didn't doubt. Something inside her clicked into place. The kind of strength born only after a heart has been shattered and rebuilt. And she hadn't even revealed her own secret yet. A truth that would turn the entire night upside down. Emily could feel every eye in the ballroom on her, but for the first time that night, she didn't shrink under the weight of their stares. Something inside her had shifted, something quiet but unbreakable. As Jacob struggled against security, shouting her name like a command he no longer had the right to give, she stood taller. Her cheeks still throbbed, her legs still trembled, yet her spirit, bruised for years, finally straightened its spine. Sanders placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Emily, he said softly, you don't have to explain anything. Not to him, not tonight. But Emily shook her head gently. No, she whispered, I need to say this. For me. Jacob froze, chest heaving, eyes wild. He breathed, softening as if he thought gentleness could undo everything. We can fix this. Don't do anything stupid. Emily looked at him with a clarity she had never felt before. I'm not the one who destroyed our marriage. You did that long before tonight. The room held its breath. I've spent years trying to be patient, she continued, voice stronger than she expected. Trying to keep peace, trying to ignore the way you changed. But I'm done letting you twist everything until I'm the one apologizing. Jacob's face contorted. Emily, please. No, she said firmly. You don't get to beg now. Vanessa swallowed, stepping back, her eyes darting to the exits. The mask of confidence she'd worn earlier was slipping fast. Sanders nodded encouragingly, silently telling Emily to keep going. So she did. You lied about money. You lied about work. You lied about us. You used my name for things I never agreed to. You let another woman hit me while I was carrying your child. Emily's voice cracked slightly, but she didn't look away. And you didn't even flinch. A murmur rippled across the crowd. Even the orchestra stopped pretending to play. Jacob's breathing grew rapid. I was stressed, I didn't think. That's the problem, Emily said quietly. You never think about anyone but yourself. For the first time, Jacob had no comeback. No excuses, no lies prepared. Sanders stepped beside her. Emily, let's leave. You don't need to stay here any longer. Emily nodded, wiping her cheek. But before she moved, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small folder she had brought unknowingly. Medical documents for her next prenatal appointment. Something inside her told her it mattered. She held it up slightly. Jacob, I never told you this because you never asked. You never cared enough to come with me to a single appointment. Her voice softened, filled with a sorrow deeper than anger. But the baby is healthy, strong, and I refuse to raise this child in fear. Jacob's knees almost buckled. Emily, please. It wasn't love in his voice. It was desperation, the panic of a man watching his power crumble. Emily took a slow breath. I'm leaving you, Jacob. The words rippled like thunder. Vanessa gasped. Jacob staggered. The room exhaled in stunned silence. Sanders placed baby No back into Emily's arms and she held him close, feeling warmth rush through her chest. A reminder she wasn't alone. She had someone to protect. Someone to live for. Jacob tried lunging again, but the guards held him firm. Emily, don't do this. You can't leave me. I already did, she whispered. She turned toward the exit, Sanders at her side, Noah resting against her heart. But just as they reached the ballroom doors, someone stepped into their path. A tall figure. calm, familiar. A man whose presence shifted the entire room. Daniel Carter. His eyes met hers with a mixture of concern and something far deeper. And Emily felt the world tilt again, this time in a way she never expected. Daniel Carter stepped forward with the calm confidence of a man who never needed to announce his presence. The moment he appeared, the ballroom seemed to inhale, as if even the chandeliers leaned closer. Emily froze. She hadn't seen him in months, not since he'd left the company where she worked as an assistant. He had always been kind, always respectful, always someone who made her feel visible in ways Jacob never had. And now here he was, standing between her and the exit like some unexpected turning point she didn't know she needed. "Emily," Daniel said softly, his voice warm but steady. "Are you okay?" The simple question cracked something inside her. Her throat tightened. "I'm fine," she whispered, though her trembling gave her away. Daniel's eyes softened. "No, you're not, but you will be." Sanders studied Daniel carefully. "You know my daughter?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir. She worked in my department before Jacob pressured her to quit." His gaze shifted to Jacob, who was still being restrained several feet away. "I saw how things were changing. I should have reached out sooner." Emily blinked, startled. "Why are you here tonight?" "I was invited by the event organizers," Daniel said. "But when I saw what was happening," he paused, anger flickering in his eyes, "I couldn't stay silent." Jacob snarled. "Stay out of this. You don't know anything about us." Daniel didn't even look at him. His attention was fully on Emily, steady, calm, grounding. "May I walk you out?" he asked gently. Emily hesitated. She glanced at her father, who nodded, trusting. She clutched Noah closer and gave Daniel a small, tired nod. "Yes, thank you." As the three of them headed toward the doors, Jacob lunged again. "Emily, don't you dare walk out with him. If you leave now, we're finished." Emily stopped and turned slowly. "We were finished long before tonight." Her voice echoed across the ballroom. People murmured. Jacob froze, eyes widening with denial. "You think you can embarrass me and get away with it?" he spat. "You think anyone will believe you over me?" Daniel stepped between them like a shield. "Everyone here already does." The crowd murmured louder. Several guests nodded. A woman near the bar whispered, "I saw everything." A man added, "I recorded part of it." Another voice chimed in, "She didn't deserve any of that." Jacob's face went pale. Sanders stepped closer. "In case you still don't understand," he said with quiet authority, "you're about to face more than embarrassment. You're facing legal consequences. You'll answer for the accounts, the forged documents, the assault, all of it." Panic lit Jacob's eyes. "You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything," Sanders replied. "You did it to yourself." Vanessa swallowed hard, edging away, realizing Jacob could no longer protect her from the fallout. Several guests turned toward her with judgment in their eyes. She backed up until her heel clicked against a pillar. Emily drew a slow breath. Something warm and steady settled inside her, the beginning of strength she didn't know she possessed. She looked Jacob in the eye one last time. "This is the last night you ever get to hurt me," she said. Jacob struggled, rage and desperation twisting together. "Emily, please, don't leave with him." Emily shook her head. "I'm not leaving with him, I'm leaving without you." Then she turned, allowing Daniel to open the door for her. The cold Manhattan night rushed in, sharp and cleansing. As she stepped out, the last sound she heard was Jacob's voice breaking. And Emily knew this was only the beginning of her rise. The cold Manhattan air wrapped around Emily like a shock of ice, but it felt cleaner than the ballroom's suffocating gold. Snowflakes drifted softly, catching in her hair, melting against baby Noah's blanket. She held him close, breathing him in, letting his warmth steady her. Daniel walked beside her, not too close, not assuming anything, just there, solid and warm in the quiet night. Judge Sanders followed, his footsteps measured, watchful. He wasn't just escorting his daughter out of a party. He was escorting her out of the darkest chapter of her life. Emily's breaths came shaky but freer. Each exhale released something she'd been holding for years. Fear, humiliation, self-doubt. She leaned lightly against the stone railing outside the plaza, letting her heartbeat settle. Noah cooed softly, his tiny fingers brushing her chin, grounding her in the present moment instead of the chaos she'd just escaped. Daniel slipped off his coat without a word and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of the fabric surprised her. She blinked up at him. "You didn't have to." I did, he said gently. You're freezing. Emily swallowed, the edges of her fear softening. Thank you. He offered a small smile, one that didn't push or pry. Take your time. Snow fell quietly around them, muting the sounds of the city. For a moment it felt like the world paused, giving her space to breathe, to feel, to exist without judgment. Sanders stepped closer, his voice low and steady. Emily, we're going home. I've already arranged everything. That single sentence carried more comfort than anything she'd heard in years. Home, Emily repeated softly, letting the words settle inside her. Daniel glanced at Sanders. Sir, if there's anything I can do. Sanders studied him closely, measuring his sincerity. Then he nodded once. You already did more than enough by stepping in. Daniel shook his head. I only wish I had stepped in sooner. Emily's chest tightened. Daniel, I didn't know you were there tonight. I didn't plan to stay, he admitted, but when I walked in and saw... He paused, anger darkening his eyes. No woman should ever be treated that way, especially not you. Emily felt her breath catch. For years she had felt invisible, unheard, small. Now someone saw her, really saw her. But emotions were tangled, heavy, too raw to sort. She lowered her eyes. I don't know what comes next, she whispered. You don't need to, Daniel said softly. You just need to heal. We'll all make sure you're safe. The word we wrapped warmly around her. She wasn't alone anymore. Sanders gently touched her shoulder. Emily, I need to tell you something important. Tomorrow morning, the district attorney is filing charges, not just for the forged documents, for financial misconduct, coercion, and endangerment. Emily froze. Endangerment? You're pregnant. Sanders said. You were struck. He restrained you. He put excessive stress on your body. That's a criminal offense. Her knees wobbled. Daniel reached out instinctively, steadying her without grabbing, just a feather-light support. Emily breathed slowly, letting the truth sink in. Jacob wasn't just losing his image, his career, his lovers, his money. He was losing his freedom. She swallowed. I never wanted revenge. No, Sanders said, but you deserve justice, and now you'll have it. Emily closed her eyes. The pain was still there, fresh and throbbing, but beneath it was something else. Relief, freedom, possibility. She opened her eyes again and met Daniel's soft, steady gaze. Emily, he said gently, whatever your future looks like, you don't have to walk into it alone. Her heart fluttered, not with romance, not yet, but with something tender and new. Hope. And for the first time in years, Emily felt strong enough to take the next step. The ride to Judge Sanders's townhouse on the Upper East Side felt strangely quiet, almost unreal. Emily sat in the back seat of the black SUV, Noah resting against her shoulder, his small breaths warm and steady. The city lights streamed through the windows like blurred streaks of gold. Beside her, Daniel sat quietly, his presence calm, never intrusive, like a steady lighthouse guiding her through unfamiliar waters. Sanders rode in the front, speaking occasionally on the phone in a low, controlled voice. Words like evidence, filing, protective order, and temporary guardianship drifted back to Emily, each one heavy but necessary. Emily stared down at Noah. He slept through so much, she murmured. Daniel glanced over. He trusts you, he said. Babies can feel when they're loved. Emily swallowed hard. I tried to protect him tonight. You did, Daniel said gently, more than anyone else in that room. The SUV turned down a quiet street lined with brownstones. Snow had started to blanket the sidewalks, softening the noise of the city. When they pulled up in front of Sanders's townhouse, he stepped out first and opened the rear door for Emily. Come on, he said softly. Let's get you inside. Emily lifted Noah carefully and stepped out. The townhouse, warm and glowing with soft yellow light, felt like a place where bad things couldn't reach her. When she crossed the threshold, the scent of cedar and old books washed over her, a smell she had grown up with, a smell that whispered safety. She sank onto the couch while Sanders took Noah upstairs to settle him in a guest room. Daniel removed his coat and placed it neatly over a chair, then took a seat across from her. Emily, he said gently, I need to ask, do you have anywhere else you feel safe staying? Any place Jacob doesn't know about? She shook her head. He knows everything. He controlled everything. Her voice broke. I didn't even realize how much until tonight. Daniel leaned forward slightly. That ends now? She looked at him, tears welling. How are you so calm about this? Because, he said softly, I've seen people rebuild from worse, And because you're stronger than you think. Emily let out a shaky breath. I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Broken things can be rebuilt, Daniel replied, sometimes stronger than before. Before Emily could respond, Sanders returned, lowering himself into the armchair beside her. His face was firm, determined, but his eyes were painfully tender. I spoke with the DA, he said. First thing in the morning, a no-contact order will be filed. Jacob will not be able to approach you, harass you, or claim anything about custody. Emily felt her heart squeeze. Custody? He never cared about Noah. He'll care now, Sanders said darkly. Not because he loves the child, but because controlling you has always been his priority. Emily's stomach churned. He'll try to fight me? He may try, Sanders said, but he'll lose. Daniel nodded. Especially with everything that happened tonight. There were too many witnesses, too many recordings. Sanders looked squarely at Emily. Tomorrow, we'll go to the police station, then to the courthouse. I'll handle the filings. You focus on resting. He hesitated, then added, You're safe here as long as you need to be. The warmth in his voice cracked something inside her all over again. Emily covered her face with her hands as tears spilled silently. Daniel rose and gently offered her a glass of water. Hey, he whispered, it's okay to cry. Emily took it gratefully, wiping her cheeks. I'm sorry, I shouldn't fall apart like this. Sanders placed a hand on hers. You're not falling apart, you're finally letting yourself breathe. Emily looked up at the two men, her father and Daniel, both steady, both determined to help her rebuild the pieces of her life. And for the first time tonight, she realized she wasn't fighting alone. Emily didn't sleep much that night. Even wrapped in a warm blanket, resting in the quiet guest room of her father's townhouse, her mind kept replaying the chaos at the plaza. The cold sting of Vanessa's slap, Jacob's grip on her wrist, the humiliation of standing helpless in front of a crowd that pretended not to see. Each memory struck like a wave, leaving her breathless. But Noah slept peacefully beside her in a small crib Sanders had quickly arranged, his tiny chest rising and falling in soft rhythms. Watching him grounded her. Each breath reminded her she had something worth fighting for. By dawn, she gave up trying to sleep and wrapped herself in a robe, stepping into the hallway. The house was still except for the faint hum of the heating system. She took slow steps toward the kitchen, hoping a cup of tea might settle her nerves. To her surprise, Daniel was already there. He stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, making coffee with an ease that seemed out of place in the judge's meticulously organized kitchen. When he turned and saw her, he straightened. You're up early, he said softly. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. He nodded knowingly. I figured I made extra in case you needed something warm. Emily hesitated. You didn't have to stay the night. I wanted to, he replied gently. I didn't want you waking up feeling like you were alone. The sincerity in his voice warmed something deep inside her. She accepted the mug he handed her and took a small sip. The heat steadied her trembling hands. Daniel leaned against the counter, studying her carefully. How are you feeling? Emily let out a shaky breath, and like I'm floating between two worlds. Last night feels like a nightmare, but it's real. And now everything is different. Different, Daniel said. Doesn't have to mean worse. Emily looked down. I'm scared. That's natural, he said. But you're also brave, even if you don't feel it. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked to the small window over the sink, watching snow fall quietly onto the street. Jacob used to tell me I was too sensitive, she whispered. That I made everything bigger than it was, and I believed him. Daniel stepped beside her, his voice soft. That's what people like him do. They make you doubt your own reality so you rely on theirs. Emily's throat tightened. I let him change me. No, Daniel said firmly. He chipped away at you. But you're still here, and you're stronger than you've ever been. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed behind them. Sanders entered the kitchen, fully dressed, his tie neatly in place. He carried a stack of documents and a grave expression. Emily, he said, we need to talk about today. She straightened instinctively. Okay. Sanders placed the documents on the table. We're meeting with the district attorney in 2 hours. After that, we'll go to the courthouse to file for an emergency protective order. Then we'll start the paperwork for separation. The room tightened around her. She clutched the mug with both hands. It's happening so fast. It needs to, Sanders said gently. Jacob will panic. He'll try to twist the narrative. We need to be ahead of him. Daniel nodded. He's unpredictable right now. Emily stared at the documents, her name printed in bold letters. A mix of fear and relief washed over her. I never imagined my marriage would end in a courthouse. Sanders softened. Your marriage didn't end today. It ended the day he stopped cherishing you. Emily's eyes burned. Daniel touched her arm lightly, grounding her. You're not losing something, he said quietly. You're reclaiming something. And as Emily breathed in the warm steam from her coffee, surrounded by two people who finally made her feel protected, she realized something. This wasn't the end of her life. This was the beginning. The district attorney's office felt colder than the winter air outside. Emily sat in a small conference room beside her father, hands folded tightly in her lap. She had faced courtrooms before, always from the viewing benches, always supporting Sanders during his long career, but never as someone whose life was the center of the paperwork spread across the table. Each document felt like a mirror, reflecting the truth she had tried so long to ignore. The assistant district attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Marisol Grant, flipped through the evidence file. Mrs. Miller, she began, what you experienced at the plaza wasn't just a domestic incident. Given the witnesses, the recorded footage, and your pregnancy, this is classified as aggravated endangerment. Emily swallowed. Even now, the words felt unreal. I never wanted it to come to this, she whispered. Marisol's tone softened. Most victims don't. But justice isn't about what you wanted. It's about what he did. Sanders placed a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. My daughter is ready to cooperate fully. Emily nodded slowly. Yes, I am. Marisol turned to Sanders. We'll issue the arrest warrant before noon. He won't be able to come near her. Daniel, seated quietly on the end of the table, exhaled for the first time in minutes. Good. Emily glanced at him, grateful for the steady presence he offered. He hadn't left her side since last night, and she was beginning to realize how deeply that mattered. Jacob had never been dependable. He had always been a storm. Daniel, by contrast, felt like sunrise. Marisol slid a new stack of papers forward. There's something else. A financial audit triggered by Jacob's forged signatures and missing funds has uncovered an account he never intended anyone to find. Emily's pulse quickened. What account? Marisol looked directly at her. An account in your maiden name, opened 5 years ago. Large deposits, no withdrawals. Emily frowned. But I didn't open any account, and I didn't have that kind of money. Which, Marisol continued, is why we believe this might be the leverage you didn't know you had. Sanders leaned forward. Leverage? Marisol nodded. It appears the money deposited there was siphoned from Jacob's company by another party, likely the CFO. Jacob suspected, but instead of reporting it, he hid the account under Emily's name to protect himself while planning to use it later. The room fell silent. Emily felt her heart race. So, he tried to protect himself with an account that technically belongs to me? Exactly, Marisol said. And because your name is the only legal owner, the funds, and any evidence of the CFO's involvement are now in your favor. Sanders exhaled through his nose, impressed despite himself. He thought he was being clever. Daniel shook his head slowly, and he ended up giving Emily the one thing he wanted most, control. Emily pressed a trembling hand to her chest. What does this mean for me? It means, Marisol said gently, you're not walking into the separation empty-handed. In fact, you're walking in with the upper hand. Emily's breath caught. Relief, fear, and something else swirling together. Hope. Sanders's voice softened. Emily, this changes everything. Daniel leaned closer. Your future just opened in ways Jacob never imagined. Emily stared down at the documents. For years, she had been powerless. Now, the man who had tried to control every corner of her life had accidentally built the foundation of her escape. She took a deep breath, steady and clear. I want to proceed, she said, with everything. Marisol nodded. Good, because this is the moment your story turns. Emily looked at the 3 people standing beside her, her father, Daniel, and a system finally working in her favor. For the first time, she felt the world shifting toward justice, rather than against her. The courthouse hallway felt strangely warm compared to the biting cold outside. Emily stood near a window overlooking the snowy street, clutching the stack of documents the district attorney had given her. Sunlight filtered in, pale and soft, landing gently on her face, as if the world were finally offering her something kind. Sanders stepped away to speak with an officer, leaving her alone with Daniel. He stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets, expression calm but alert, protective in a way that didn't smother her, only steadied her. "You're handling all of this better than anyone I've seen," he said softly. Emily let out a brittle laugh. "I don't feel like I'm handling anything. I feel like I'm just trying not to fall apart in public." Daniel shook his head. "You faced humiliation, betrayal, danger, but you're still standing. That's strength, Emily. Real strength." She stared out the window, watching people hurry along the sidewalks, their breath fogging in the cold. "I used to think strength meant staying, enduring, keeping peace even when everything hurt. And now?" Daniel asked gently. Emily took a breath, her fingers tightening around the documents. "Now I think strength is choosing yourself, even when it means losing everything you thought you needed." Daniel smiled softly. "Then you're one of the strongest people I know." Emily's heart fluttered in a way she didn't expect. She wasn't ready for love, not yet, but the warmth in Daniel's words settled somewhere deep inside her, where old wounds were slowly beginning to close. Before she could respond, Sanders returned, his expression serious but hopeful. "It's done," he said. "The emergency protective order is filed. Jacob can't come within 500 feet of you." Emily exhaled shakily. "Thank you, Dad." "There's more," Sanders added, lowering his voice. "The judge approved temporary sole custody of Noah. Given everything that happened, it wasn't difficult to argue." Emily felt her eyes sting. "He can't take him?" "No," Sanders said firmly. "Not anymore." Relief washed over her, warm and overwhelming. She had feared that part the most, Jacob using Noah as leverage. The thought still made her stomach twist. Daniel placed a hand on the back of her chair. One less thing to worry about. But Sanders wasn't finished. He pulled a small packet from his briefcase and handed it to her. "Emily, there's something else you should see." Emily hesitated before opening it. Inside were printouts, emails, bank transfers, internal memos. All of them tied to the secret account the district attorney had mentioned. "What am I looking at?" she whispered. "Proof," Sanders said, "that Jacob wasn't the only one involved in the financial misconduct. The CFO orchestrated most of it. Jacob covered for him, probably thinking he'd get a payout later." Emily frowned. "Why would the CFO target me?" "He didn't," Sanders replied. "Jacob did. He used your name because it was clean, untouched, safe." Emily felt sick. All this time, he saw me as a shield. Daniel's jaw tightened. "You were never his partner. You were his protection." Emily looked down at the documents trembling in her hands. For years she had given Jacob her loyalty, her patience, her trust, even when it hurt, and he had used every piece of it as armor for his own corruption. But now that armor belonged to her. Sanders placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "Emily, this evidence makes you the most credible witness in the entire case. The CFO will fold the moment he realizes you're cooperating. And Jacob, he won't have anywhere left to hide." She took a long, steady breath. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a dark hallway. It felt like a door slowly opening. Daniel leaned closer. "You're almost free." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of their support settle deep inside her. And when she opened them, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, control over her own life. By the time Emily returned to her father's townhouse that afternoon, exhaustion wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She sank onto the living room sofa, the stack of legal documents resting on the coffee table beside her. The house was warm, filled with soft lamplight and the muted hum of the heater. Noah slept peacefully upstairs, unaware of how drastically their lives had changed in the past 24 hours. Emily pressed a hand to her forehead. "It's so much," she whispered to herself. "All of it." Daniel entered quietly from the kitchen, carrying 2 cups of chamomile tea. "Your dad went to take a call. I thought you might need something warm." She managed a small smile. "Thank you." He handed her a cup before sitting down, not too close, leaving room for her to breathe. "How are you holding up?" Emily exhaled shakily. "I don't know. This morning feels like a year ago." "That's trauma," Daniel said softly. "Your body is catching up to everything your mind had to push through." Emily nodded, staring down at the tea. "I keep thinking, how did I let it get this far? How did I not see it sooner?" Daniel shook his head. You trusted him. That isn't a weakness, it's a quality he exploited. Emily looked at him, eyes glassy. You sound so sure. I am, he said gently. Jacob didn't break you because you were weak. He broke things because he feared your strength. A lump rose in her throat. Strength, she murmured. I don't feel strong. Daniel leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. You walked out. You stood up in front of hundreds of people and told the truth. You protected your child. You faced the district attorney. You signed the separation papers. His voice softened even more. Emily, strong doesn't even begin to describe you. It was too much, too kind. She blinked hard, tears threatening to fall again. Please don't. If you're too gentle with me right now, I'm going to cry. Then cry, Daniel said. You've earned that too. A small, broken laugh escaped her, half sorrow, half relief. She wiped her cheeks quickly and took a shaky sip of tea. Daniel watched her quietly for a moment. There's something else I want to talk to you about, he said carefully. But only if you're ready. Emily tensed. What is it? Our old job, he said. After you left, the department changed. People kept saying how things felt colder. You were the one who held everything together. He took a breath. I'm launching a new consulting firm. Small team, flexible hours, remote options. I want you to join me, if you want to. Emily stared at him. You want me? As part of my team, Daniel clarified gently, though a faint blush touched his cheeks. You're smart, organized, cautious in ways that matter, and I think you need work that gives you independence, stability, a future that's yours. A future that's yours. Those words sank deep into her chest, landing in a place that had been empty far too long. I don't know if I'm ready, she whispered. That's okay, Daniel said. I'm not asking you to start tomorrow, or even next week. I'm just saying, you deserve options. She looked down at her hands, still shaking faintly but open, no longer clenched in fear. Nobody has ever offered me something without expecting something in return. Daniel's voice softened. Then let this be the first time. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't tense. It was warm, full of possibility. Footsteps approached, and Sanders entered the living room with a serious expression. Emily, he said. The district attorney just called. Emily's stomach tightened. What happened? Sanders looked at her gravely. Jacob was arrested 20 minutes ago, and he's already naming names. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. The living room seemed to tilt slightly as her father's words sank in. Jacob, arrested. A man who once strutted through rooms with smug confidence was now sitting in a holding cell somewhere, stripped of the power he used to crush her spirit. She blinked, unsure if she should feel relief, fear, or something heavier. Sanders stepped closer. He's cooperating, he said. Or rather, he's trying to. Emily swallowed. What does that mean? It means, Sanders continued, Jacob is blaming the CFO for the financial misconduct. He's claiming he was manipulated, pressured. He's trying to play the victim. Daniel scoffed quietly. Classic. Sanders nodded. But here's the twist he didn't see coming. The CFO was arrested an hour before Jacob. Emily's eyes widened. So the CFO talked first? Exactly, Sanders said, and he gave the DA a detailed timeline. Transcripts, documents, audio files, everything Jacob didn't know he kept. Emily's heartbeat quickened. So Jacob can't shift the blame. No, Sanders said. In fact, he made things worse by trying. Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He dug himself deeper. Emily pressed a hand to her chest, feeling a mixture of dizziness and clarity. For years, Jacob had twisted narratives, manipulated conversations, reshaped reality until she questioned her own memory. Now he was the one cornered, stripped of his version of the truth. Sanders continued. He also mentioned something unusual. He claimed someone outside the company encouraged him to hide funds in your name. Emily felt her stomach clench. Outside? Who? We're still investigating, Sanders said. But my instincts tell me Jacob isn't just guilty. He was tangled in something bigger. Emily's pulse throbbed in her throat. Bigger? How? Sanders hesitated before answering. Corporate fraud on a large scale. Possibly money laundering. For a moment, Emily forgot how to breathe. Money laundering? Daniel leaned forward. Emily, if that's true, you were in danger long before last night. The words landed like stones in her stomach. Emily hugged her arms around herself, heat rising behind her eyes. Why didn't he tell me? Why would he drag me into something like that? Sanders spoke gently. Because he saw you as a shield. Innocent, untouched, and most importantly, easy to manipulate. Emily looked down, tears spilling silently. I gave him everything, every chance, every piece of myself, and Daniel moved closer, his voice steady. He took advantage of your kindness, Emily. That's not your shame, it's his. Emily wiped her cheeks, breathing shakily. What happens now? Sanders sat across from her. Now? You're safe, legally protected, financially secure with that account, and the police will keep us updated. Jacob can't contact you. The court won't allow it. Emily nodded slowly, the weight of the last 24 hours finally pressing down on her shoulders. It feels unreal. That's normal, Sanders said softly. Your reality was controlled for years. The truth takes time to settle. Emily looked at Daniel, needing something grounding. And you? You're still here. Daniel offered a gentle smile. I'll stay as long as you want me to. Warmth flooded her chest, unexpected, fragile, but real. She didn't know where the future would take her. But for the first time, she wasn't walking into it alone. She had safety, she had support, she had a chance to rebuild. And somewhere deep inside her, a small spark flickered, a spark of hope she barely recognized. Sanders's phone buzzed again. He checked it, then looked up, expression tightening. There's more, he said quietly. Something you need to see. Emily braced herself. What is it? Sanders handed her the phone. A video. A video of Jacob confessing something he never meant for anyone to hear. Emily stared at the phone in her father's hand, her pulse pounding in her ears. Play it, she whispered, though her voice trembled. Daniel shifted closer, not touching her, just ready in case she needed someone to hold on to. Sanders pressed the screen. The video opened with a dimly lit interrogation room. Jacob sat at the metal table, his hands shaking, hair disheveled, the smug confidence from the plaza completely gone. He looked smaller, cornered, afraid. The detective's voice filled the room. Mr. Miller, we have testimony from your CFO and evidence you moved funds into an account under your wife's maiden name. Why? Jacob squeezed his eyes shut, exhaling shakily. Because I knew Emily wouldn't look. She trusted me. She never questioned anything. Emily felt a cold shiver crawl down her spine. I figured, Jacob continued, voice cracking, if things went bad, I could say she opened the account. She wouldn't know what to do. She'd panic. She'd depend on me. Emily clutched her hands together, nails biting into her palms. Daniel's jaw tightened. The detective leaned forward. So you manipulated your wife to protect yourself? Yes, Jacob whispered. I needed her to stay. I needed her scared. I needed control. Emily's breath caught, sharp, painful. But the worst part, Jacob muttered, staring at the table, is that it worked. She believed me, every time. Emily felt her chest constrict. The shame wasn't hers, yet the sting of his words sank deep. The detective asked, and the incident at the Plaza Hotel? Jacob scrubbed his hands over his face. I didn't plan it. Vanessa, she told me Emily was talking to board members behind my back, that she was embarrassing me. His voice shook. I snapped. I held her so Vanessa could slap her. I thought it would shut her up, make her behave, make her stay in line. Emily's stomach twisted. He continued, voice cracking. I didn't think she'd leave. She's never left before. Sanders paused the video. Emily sat frozen, her heart hammering, throat tight, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. He said, he needed me scared, she whispered. Daniel moved closer but still didn't touch her. Emily, this is proof. Proof of what he did. Proof it was never your fault. She shook her head. I lived with that man. I slept next to him. I defended him. And all that time, he was planning how to break me. Sanders knelt in front of her, his steady hands gripping her trembling ones. Sweetheart, listen to me, he said gently. You survived something insidious. Something hidden. Something many people never find the strength to walk away from. He squeezed her hands. But you did. Emily closed her eyes, letting the truth settle, heavy and painful. I feel stupid. Don't you dare say that, Sanders said firmly. Love makes good people vulnerable. Manipulation turns vulnerability into a weapon. That doesn't make you weak, it makes him monstrous. Daniel added softly, and walking out that door last night makes you powerful. Emily swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe. I thought he loved me. Daniel shook his head gently. He loved control, not you. The truth hurt, but it also freed something deep inside her. Sanders sat beside her. There's more, he said, but his voice softened. Not more pain, something you need to hear. He pressed play again. the detective asked. If your wife hadn't walked out, what were you planning next? Jacob hesitated, then whispered, I was going to sell the apartment she inherited. She didn't know the paperwork was already filed. Emily's breath hitched. He would have taken everything. Sanders stopped the video. This, he said firmly, is the final nail in his case, and the final proof you needed. Emily stared at the phone, tears falling freely. Then she lifted her chin. For the first time, there was steel in her voice. I'm done being afraid. The next morning, the city felt different. Not quieter. Manhattan never quieted, but clearer, as if the noise that once swallowed Emily whole no longer reached the same depths inside her. She dressed slowly, choosing a soft gray sweater and black maternity slacks. Comfortable, simple. Hers. When she stepped downstairs, she found Sanders in the foyer, coat on, briefcase in hand. Daniel stood beside him, speaking quietly. They stopped when they saw her. You look steadier today, Sanders said gently. Emily exhaled. I feel steadier. They exchanged a look, one of relief. Sanders cleared his throat. We have a meeting at the company headquarters. The board requested your presence. Emily's eyes widened. Me? Why? Because, Sanders said, you're the legal owner of the account Jacob used. You're central to the investigation. And, he hesitated, they want to apologize. Emily froze. Apologies were not something she ever expected from people who once looked through her like she was decorative furniture. Daniel approached her slowly. I'll be there the whole time. You won't face them alone. Her heart fluttered, but she steadied herself. Okay, let's go. The corporate tower loomed over Park Avenue, a sleek glass monolith reflecting the morning light. Emily walked between Sanders and Daniel, her steps small but sure. Inside, the lobby was filled with polished marble, high ceilings, and the familiar coldness of a world she never felt welcome in. But today, something was different. People stared, not with dismissal, but with recognition, with caution, with something close to respect. An assistant escorted them to the executive boardroom on the 27th floor. The moment Emily entered, the room fell silent. 7 board members sat at the long mahogany table, men and women who once praised Jacob, who once ignored her existence. Now they rose to their feet. Mrs. Hartman, the chairman said, voice steady, thank you for coming. Emily didn't sit until Sanders motioned for her to. Daniel sat beside her, a quiet anchor. The chairman folded his hands. We owe you a formal apology. What happened last night was unacceptable, and Jacob's actions, both personal and financial, have left this company exposed. Emily nodded slowly. I understand. One board member cleared her throat. We reviewed the evidence given to the district attorney. Because the hidden account is under your name, and because you are unaware of the transactions, you are legally protected. But you also have leverage. Emily blinked. Leverage? Daniel leaned in. Meaning they may need your cooperation to stabilize the company. Sanders gave a barely there smile, which means they're motivated to treat you with respect. The chairman slid a folder toward her. We would like your permission to access the account for auditing purposes. In exchange, the board agrees to provide full transparency, a written apology, and support in any legal actions you pursue against Jacob. Emily stared at the folder. Just days ago, she would have been too terrified to take it, too unsure of her worth. But now she saw her value. Her voice didn't shake. I'll agree, but I want everything in writing, and I want a copy of the full audit. The board members exchanged quick glances. The chairman nodded. Of course. Emily leaned back slowly. She felt Daniel's quiet pride beside her, felt Sanders' steady approval from across the table. She had come into this building once as a shadow. Today, she sat at the center of the table. And then, another twist. The chairman cleared his throat. There's one more matter. The CFO has requested a private meeting with you. He claims he has information Jacob didn't reveal. Emily stiffened. Why me? Because, the chairman said carefully, he believes Jacob kept a secret from everyone, including you. Daniel's jaw tightened. If you don't want the meeting, Emily straightened. No, I'll hear what he has to say. She was done being afraid and ready for whatever truth came next. The room arranged for the meeting with the CFO was small, glass-walled, and far too bright. Emily stood just outside it, her breath shallow but steady. Daniel remained close enough to reassure her, yet far enough to give her space. Sanders watched the closed door with a hardened expression, ready to intervene if necessary. Remember, Sanders said softly, You don't owe him anything, not your politeness, not your understanding. Emily nodded. I know. But she also knew this. She needed the truth. A security officer opened the door. Mrs. Hartman, he's ready. Emily stepped inside. The CFO, Richard Hale, sat alone at the table, wrists free, though two officers stood behind him. He was older than she expected, with graying hair and tired eyes, not the slick, calculating villain she'd imagined. More like a man who had made too many compromises and now stood at the edge of their consequences. He rose slowly when she entered. Mrs. Hartman, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Emily sat without returning the courtesy. You said you had something to tell me. Richard nodded, lowering himself back into his chair. Yes, something Jacob hid even from me. Something that explains why he used your name, why he stayed married to you longer than he wanted. A knot formed in Emily's stomach. Just tell me. He exhaled. 3 years ago, Jacob was almost fired. He made a disastrous investment, one that cost the company nearly $500,000. He should have been terminated. Instead, someone intervened. Someone close to you. Emily frowned. Close to me? Who? Your mother. My mother died years ago. Richard shook his head gently, not before making one last request. The knot in her stomach tightened painfully. Explain. Your father never told you this, Richard said carefully, but your mother saved Jacob's career. She had influence, connections, and she used them. She asked the board to give him another chance, because she believed he would take care of you. Emily felt the air drain from her lungs. In return, Richard continued, Jacob promised your mother he would always protect you, that he would build a stable life for you. He even promised to give her access to his financial records if she ever had concerns. Emily swallowed hard. How do you know this? Because I was there. Richard said, I witnessed the agreement. I drafted the documents. He slid a worn, folded paper across the table. Emily hesitated before opening it. Her mother's handwriting. Her breath faltered. Emily, the note began, you deserve a man who loves you the way your father loves me. If Jacob ever fails you, I want you to know, I tried to give him the chance to do right. Emily pressed the letter to her chest, tears blurring her vision. Richard continued quietly, your mother believed in Jacob more than anyone. When she died, those promises he made to her became nothing but leverage. He knew breaking the marriage would make him look like he broke his word to a dying woman. Emily whispered, so he stayed? For her reputation? Not for me. Yes, Richard said, and when things got worse, he used your name because he knew you were the one person the board would hesitate to investigate, out of respect for your mother. Emily wiped her cheeks, anger and sorrow twisting painfully. Why tell me this now? Richard looked at her, eyes heavy with guilt. Because I'm done protecting Jacob. He would have let me take the fall. He already tried, and you were a casualty he never cared about. But your mother did. She deserves for you to know the truth. Emily closed her eyes. For years, she thought she stayed because she wasn't strong enough to leave. Now she realized Jacob stayed because he was too weak to face the truth. She stood. Thank you, she said. But this doesn't excuse what you did. I know. Richard whispered, I'm ready to face my consequences. Emily handed the paper to Sanders as she walked out. Daniel met her immediately. Emily, are you okay? She looked up, her eyes shining with grief but strength beneath it. No, she whispered, but I'm finally free from the lies. And now, all that was left was justice. The courthouse lobby was buzzing by the time Emily arrived for Jacob's arraignment. Reporters clustered near the entrance, murmuring about financial crimes, leaked interrogation footage, and the dramatic fall of a once ambitious executive. But as Emily stepped inside, Noah in her arms, Sanders and Daniel flanking her, every whisper seemed to fade. People turned, not to stare at a victim, but at a woman who had survived everything thrown at her. She walked with a quiet calm that came from something deeper than confidence. It was the stillness of someone who had faced their darkest night and lived to see the dawn. Inside the courtroom, Jacob sat in handcuffs, eyes hollow. The arrogance he once carried like armor was gone. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his shoulders slumped. When he saw Emily enter, he straightened, hope flickering desperately across his face. Emily, he whispered. She did not look away, but she did not step toward him either. The judge called the room to order. Legal terms filled the air: embezzlement, fraud, identity misuse, endangerment, coercion. Each charge landed like a stone, and with every one, Jacob's face paled. When asked for a plea, Jacob hesitated. His gaze shifted to Emily again, as if begging her to save him one last time. But Emily simply held Noah closer, her expression calm, unreadable. "Guilty," Jacob finally choked. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge nodded. "Sentencing will be set for next month. Bail is denied." Jacob sagged, defeated. Emily felt no joy, no triumph in the cruel sense. Only justice, only closure. When the hearing ended, Jacob stood as officers prepared to take him away. For a moment, he looked like a stranger she had never known. "Emily," he called softly, voice breaking, "was any of it real? Did you ever love me?" Emily paused. She didn't owe him an answer, but she owed herself the truth. "Yes," she said, "I did." Jacob swallowed hard. "And that," Emily continued, "is why I won't let you hurt me anymore." His face crumpled as officers let him out. Emily turned away. Her past walked through those steel doors, leaving her world forever. Outside, the winter sunlight gleamed across the courthouse steps. Reporters tried to rush forward, but Sanders lifted a protective hand, making space for her. Daniel stepped beside her, his voice gentle. "It's over." Emily looked down at Noah, sleeping peacefully against her. "It's over," she echoed, feeling the words settle into her bones. Sanders placed a warm hand on her shoulder. "Your mother would be proud of you." Emily's breath tightened, but in a good way. "I hope so." They walked toward the car, but before she reached the door, Daniel paused, turning to her with a careful, almost shy expression. "Emily," he said, "I know you're healing. I know timing matters. But I want to say something. Only once, and only if you're ready." Emily met his eyes, gentle, steady, full of something she had not felt in years: safety. "Say it," she whispered. He exhaled. "You deserve a life filled with respect, kindness, joy, and if someday, whenever you're ready, you want someone to build that with, I'd like to be considered." Emily felt a warmth bloom in her chest, soft, steady, healing. She stepped closer, her voice almost a whisper. "Daniel, I want that too. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but someday, yes." Daniel's smile was small but full of hope. "Then I'll wait, as long as you need." Emily slipped her hand into his, lightly, gently, but with certainty. For the first time in years, her future wasn't a shadow, it was a sunrise. Emily lifted Noah in her arms, the man she trusted beside her, and walked forward into a world finally free. And this time, the story would be hers. So that's it, my dear friends. Our story has finally come to an end. But if you're still here listening until this very moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, honest way. And maybe it's because Emily's story isn't just her own. Parts of it belong to all of us. The parts that endured pain, rose after betrayal, or learned to walk away from what no longer honored our worth. Life isn't about avoiding hardship. The Stoics remind us the obstacle is the way. Every wound, every disappointment, every goodbye, they aren't punishments. They are invitations to become stronger, wiser, more grounded. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And Emily's healing began the moment she realized that truth, the moment she chose herself. So if you're carrying something heavy tonight, let this be your reminder. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. You deserve a life built on honesty and love, not fear. And now, my wonderful friends, if this story touched you, please don't leave quietly. Give this video a like, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you and I can keep walking these emotional journeys together. You matter. And I'm grateful you're here.